Did you know that parameters in ROS2 can be get, set, listed, and described through a set of services for nodes that are already running? In fact, the well-known and convenient ROS2 param command line tool is a wrapper around these service calls that makes it easy to manipulate parameters from the command line. While ROS2 nodes can perform parameter operations internally through node APIs, external processes can perform parameter operations via parameter services that are created by default when a node is instantiated. Since parameters in ROS2 are associated with individual nodes, this opens up new possibilities for dynamically working with parameters, such as getting one node to manipulate parameters that are hosted by another node. I will cover this topic in my following tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll answer this question from ROS Answers by showing you how to manipulate multiple parameters in ROS2 from the command line using parameter services rather than ROS2 param commands, which can only work with one parameter at a time. You will get an introduction to using all of the parameter services via the command line interface, not just SetParameters. Ideally, you should already have a basic understanding of parameters and be familiar with using the ROS2 param command line tool. It is also assumed that you have a basic knowledge of services. I've included links to all pages inside the text tutorial in the description below. I'll be using the constructs ROS Development Studio in a ROS2 Humble workspace called ROS2_WS. First, we'll create a ROS2 Python package called Python Parameters. Then we'll create a Python node called Python Parameters node. In this node, we have two parameters of type string. The parameters are my parameter with value me and description this parameter is mine, and your parameter with value you and description this parameter is yours. You can also have other types as listed in the documentation. The node has a timer callback with a period of 1 second just to log what the current parameters are. Now we'll configure the package and test. We'll start by modifying the setup.py by adding the entry point, and then we'll compile the package. And then run the node. You should get something like this, where it says, I am me, you are you, and repeats every second. In a different terminal, you can get a list of all parameters by doing ROS2 param list. You should see both my parameter and your parameter in the output. Now, the usual way to set parameters dynamically during runtime is to use the ROS2 param set. For example, we can modify the value of your parameter to be a student. You can see that the value of your parameter has changed. However, if you want to set multiple parameters at once, you need to use the SetParameters service. First, we'll kill and restart the node to reset the parameter values before continuing on. We'll list all active services along with their types by doing ROS2 service list -t. You should see 6 services, including the one that we need, named SetParameters. Then we can determine the request message fields by looking at the documentation or by running ROS2 interface show. The result is this. This means that we need to send a list of parameters, each with a name and a value. So our service call should look something like this. In this service call, we want to set the myParameter value to a teacher and your parameter value to a student. Note that each value contains a type that we specify using an enumerator integer. More information can be found on the documentation. In this case, we used for to specify the type as a string. As a result of running the service call, the node should look like this. Note that this service only modifies parameters that succeed in being set. For example, if you give an incorrect type, then it will not be modified. In this service call, myParameter is specified incorrectly as an integer type using 2, whilst your parameter is correctly specified as a string. Before we run it, we'll kill and restart the node to reset the parameter values. We'll run it now. You can see here that it was unsuccessful at sending the first parameter due to it being the wrong type, but it was successful at setting the second parameter. Indeed, we can have a look and see that the second parameter is changed, but the first parameter is not. Now we can also call other parameter services, not just SetParameters. But first, we'll have to kill and restart the node to reset the parameter values before continuing on. We'll first try the SetParameters atomically service. This attempts to set the given list of parameter values just like SetParameters. However, if any parameter fails to be set, then none of them are set. Sending the same request from before, where myParameter was set to the wrong type, results in none of the parameters being modified. As we can see, it was overall unsuccessful at setting the parameters, and none of them are changed. Now, when we make a service call where both parameters have the correct type, then we can see that it was successful and both parameters are changed. We can also use the getParameters service to return a list of parameter values. We'll simply put the list of parameters that we want to get. We can also get parameter types to get the types specifically, or we can describe parameters to get the full description. And we can also list parameters where we provide an optional list of prefixes. So in this case, it returns a list of all parameters starting with my and your. Of course, you can go to the documentation to learn more about interacting with parameters through services and explore more functionality in each of these services.